Welcome to the Write Your Own Story podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Leonidas, and the founder of the Write Your Own Story company. Girl, I can tell you right now, you are definitely enough. Here we value service, sisterhood, connection, laughter, and that super genuine, keep it real, tell you like it is honesty. My hope is at the end of each episode, you realize you can do whatever it is you dream about and that you are not alone with what you struggle with. I'm hoping that you are snapping and clapping and hell yes in your way through each one of these episodes. So if this tracks with you, let's get started. I'm so glad you're here. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Write Your Own Story podcast. I am your host, Betsy Leonidas, and I am so pleased to be here with Margaret Graziano, the CEO and founder of Keen Alignment and a Wall Street Journal best-selling author of the book Ignite Culture. Those who know her and love her call her Maji, and she has emerged as one of the most influential business leaders in Silicon Valley, celebrated for her innovative approach to enhancing workplace dynamics and employee engagement. I mean, no small feat, Maji. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. I'm privileged and honored that you've invited me.
And I like to start off every episode with an intention. Really, I think we're going to talk about the future of leadership, but what I love is sort of your very specific angle, which I think is going to be absolutely inspiring. But as we had talked about off camera, really intentional about the promise of this episode is to inspire people to connect to their highest level of knowing and know that they can live their best life both inside and outside of work, which I'm like, again, this is amazing. So when you go in to coach people, and I'll let you get going on your bio here in just a second, but I think it's amazing that it's not just, let me tell you how to be more productive, or let me tell you, like what it means to be a kind leader. It's so much more than that. So I have a million questions for you because I am an ex-corporate girly and have worked in all sorts of shapes and sizes of companies. But would you mind just giving us a quick rundown? Tell us about who you are and what you're up to.
Yeah, so I've never been a corporate girl. I have always worked in small business, started my career in recruiting in a small family-owned business. They had 6 branches in the Chicagoland area, and they were very well known, but we were still a small privately held company. But where I got my corporate exposure is I placed over 10,000 people over 20 years in direct hire, contract, and contract to hire positions at companies of all shapes and sizes, from Fortune back then 100, and it was back then, to 26-person people companies. And I learned, I had this hiring process, which we're not going to talk about today, but it always had to do with what was important to people. I would ask them, if you could create a magic wand and have your dream job, which is a different version of what's your calling, what's your legacy, what's your aim, what would you be doing? And I took that information from them, and it became part of my secret sauce in placing so many people. And the people that I placed went up through the organization and became then my contact for getting business. And
Amazing.
so I learned from living with them, and I say living because we spend 70% of our waking hours at work, and walking side by side with them through their journey, how screwed up organizational culture can really be, and how companies will say, we need an A player, or they used to. I don't think they talk like that anymore, but we need an A player, but they were bringing them into C teams and then wondering why they weren't staying.
Totally.
So that 20 years of learning why people leave companies, learning why people say yes to companies, and learning why people stay and get promoted really was a foundation for me to get into the organizational culture business. And on a personal basis, I'm a grandmother of 5.
Wow,
oldest
awesome.
is 13. Yeah, youngest is about 4 months. And I live in I live on the northern end of the central coast of California, but that's new. For my whole life until I was 48 years old, I lived in Chicago.
Oh,
and
wow.
had a epiphany when I was running my recruiting company. I went to a 4-day workshop, and they took us 20 years into the future. And I had no idea what was going to show up in this guided visualization, but I wasn't owning a recruiting company anymore. I was living and working in Northern California, hosting executive retreats for executives and their teams and working with them to create the kind of culture where even they were inspired about coming to work. Not just a culture for their employees, but a culture for them. Because what a lot of people don't understand, while executives and leaders get the label of they're narcissists or they expect too much or they're unfair, what they don't realize is most CEOs, which I have spent 25 years with them through the Vistage community, most CEOs are up at night, especially of small to mid-sized companies, up at night worrying and frustrated with what's going on in their businesses. They're not just driving their fancy cars to their fancy house. They're in agony over their business and over the things they can't control. And they've got big skin in the game. So the percentage of CEOs and leaders that are assholes and jerks is very, very small compared to the percentage that are struggling just to make it through the darn day and make sure their business is healthy. And so that's why when I got into this business, it was around empowering CEOs and the executive team and helping them cultivate their own cellular connection to their work so that they could create the kind of companies where even they enjoyed working at. And yes, the employees have everything to do with it, but it doesn't start with them. The heart of every organization is the health and the well-being of that executive team, that they're operating with courage and belief that they have control to create the kind of future where everyone can thrive. And if they're healthy and if they're operating in alignment with their values and their aim for their life, well, everyone else is going to trickle down and get the same thing. So in the book, Ignite Culture, the first chapter is about the health of the organization depends on the health of the person running it.
Wow. I mean, they do say that it trickles down. Absolutely. Okay. So in terms of, first of all, going back to the visualization and then having this, and then what made you brave enough to then have this visualization to then actually get out and do it? I mean, that's truly uprooting your life, which super kudos to you, but that's a big move.
Yeah, that's such a good question, and most people don't ask that. And so I created that vision. I had it all out on a vision board. I had a coach. Everybody knew what my aim was. And then I got scared and I retracted into this lucrative. I mean, I was really good at recruiting. I was in the top 3%. And I didn't even know that until I was inducted into this group called the Pinnacle Society for top producers in the country. So I didn't even know, and I didn't even know that I didn't know it. But looking at the income, I was a single mom. Actually, I was probably married at the time, but felt like a single mom because I was the only income provider. And to leave that well over six-figure career and do something completely new was a threat that I was not emotionally, mentally, spiritually equipped to do. So what I did is I hung out at the organization that I had the epiphany at. It was Landmark Education. I did all of their programs. I became a coach for them. I became a seminar leader for them. And I was living my dream inside the construct of their organization and working for free for 8 years.
Oh boy.
And I was actually leading a workshop for them, a seminar called the Velocity Seminar. And as I was preparing, because they do a darn good job of training leaders, I will tell you, you don't get paid, but they invest in you as being an extraordinary facilitator from the front of the room. And so she's like, you have to use your own life. You have to use your own life. Where have you let go of a dream? And so I'm getting ready for the seminar. I'm like, oh shit.
Oh shit.
And so I'm in front of 250 people. And I say, where have you let go of your dream? And it hits me like, I got to be real.
Yeah.
And I shared.
Yeah.
I let go of the dream of moving to Northern California and working directly with CEOs and their executive team. And I shared the whole thing. And in that moment, I realized that I could no longer be a Landmark seminar leader because my dream was a direct conflict with my agreement of being a seminar leader. Because if you're a seminar leader, you cannot operate in the organizational development or executive development field because they view you as a competitor, which is cray-cray, but that's how they were. That's their culture. So the next day I resigned from being a seminar leader, and there was a wake throughout Chicago of like that I did it on purpose or I used them to get training. And anyway, I moved on. I sold my business. I sold my recruiting company. It was 2008. This is how the universe works. It's 2008, weeks before the crash. I sold my business in June, sold my McMansion in August 5th of 2008. I got an incredible price for that house. 5 days later, that house had lost its value by $500,000.
Oh my God.
I would have been belly up because
Yeah.
I had debt. I remember I was a single mom.
Right. I
My
hear
former
you.
husband and I built this big house, paying the big mortgage,
Oh
making the
yeah.
big bucks, because that's what we do. We trap ourselves in our
Uh-huh.
income and then we're stuck and then we freak out about it. But I want to say God was on my side. The universe was on my
Yeah.
side. Sold the house. The bottom fell out. I walked away positive cash flow from both the business, both the house. And I said, I'm going to build my future. I took a year and I built a coaching program. That was the beginning of the momentum coaching program that Keen Alignment now has. And then I got one client. He hired me to do a role analysis, which is part of my old history work with recruiting. And then
Yeah.
he hired me to coach 7 people in his department. But then I got scared again. And
Yeah.
I
Fear
said,
is the
I don't know how to build this business. I'm still in Illinois at the time. I'm
Oh,
now
I was
renting a
gonna
house.
ask, have you moved? Yeah, okay. And how old are your
Have
kids at this
not
point?
moved yet.
Single mom talk.
My
How old are
kids,
your kids at this point?
my youngest son was 17 years old and he was at military school. So he didn't even live at home. So
Okay.
me
So
going
yeah.
to California, I
Mm-hmm.
flew back, by the way, every 2 weeks. But here's what happened.
Yeah, tell me.
I said, how am I going to make money? I got to make
Mm-hmm.
money in order to do this dream job. So I said, what do I have to offer? And I was working with a coach. And well, I had the hiring process from 20 years in recruiting, and we were calling it conscious hiring. I'm going to go to Silicon Valley and turn that thing into a software. So I sold, even got out of my rental. Zach was in a boarding school, and I'm there driving to California, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I'm going to create a software, and I'm going to go to the place that has the highest turnover on the planet and the highest business failure, Silicon Valley, and they're going to get it.
Yeah.
So I drove to California. I started going to startup meetings. Nobody was buying into this thing called conscious hiring. I couldn't find anybody. So I go to Italy. I take my son for his graduation, high school graduation to Italy. I'm standing on the top of a mountain in Sorrento. And I said, please, God, give me a sign that I'm on the right track. Send me somebody to build my software. I
Yeah.
go home. I'm home 8 hours, walking down the street in Willow Glen, California, suburb of Silicon Valley. And I see a sign on a door and it said, we turn your HR process into an app available at your fingertips. And I
Shut
said,
up.
God, are you talking to me?
I
And the
think
name of the
so.
company, I have to change the name of the company to protect the innocent and to
Yes.
protect the guilty. And
Oh
because I'm
dear.
on a gag
Yeah.
order.
Oh
So
Lord.
let's say it was Henry Knows. And I
Yeah.
open the door and I say, is Henry in?
Yeah.
3 chairs swirl around and they're all like, I'm Henry. Should have known that then that there was
Right.
going to be trouble.
Oh
Above
no.
Henry's head, Henry turned out to be the middle guy, but above his head was what looked like a recruiting app. So I swear to God, I think that this is divine intervention. I talk to them. I share my idea. I share conscious hiring. They say conscious, nobody wants conscious, but they want keen. And so we use the name Keen Hire, which I also had. And we started building it. We spent a year. I brought my son, my middle son, James, in. I brought my former business, the woman I mentored for 7 years in. She was a PhD in IO psychology. We built this app. I brought board members in. I brought customers, all the customers that I had. My best customers were the board of advisors. I brought in a board member who could get us funding. I really believed that divine intervention was leading the way. What I
Yeah.
didn't do is I didn't use my own hiring process to vet that Henry. Turns up
Oh,
Henry has had other companies. Turns up Henry was a married guy pretending to be single, and he's had affairs with people in his former company. And I was now having an affair with him because, of course, I fell in love with him because it was divine intervention, and he wasn't
uh,
wearing a wedding ring and never talked about being married.
uh,
So long story short, they fired my business partner, my protege, because they said she was causing too much trouble. She was the PhD who was working on, and she had a heavy background in statistics. Fired her because I brought in another PhD. They figured she was expendable. They were going to use her, and she was causing too much trouble. She wanted to know where the money was going.
yeah.
Fired her, never told me. My phone was blowing up. And finally, after 29 rejections, 8 o'clock at night, and I picked it up and I said, "Who is this?" And she said, "Maji, it's Stephanie. He cut me out." I was furious. I called him up. He said, "If you don't like it, you'll be next."
Whoa.
So now I'm a little nervous. I go into work the next day. He says, "Software's coming out in 2 weeks. Here's our new agreement based on the funding." And we went from being 50-50 partners to
Yeah.
be 90-10, and I got the low end of the stick.
Oh,
I completely went into a panic attack.
yeah.
I called my best friend at the time. She said, you got to do something about this.
Yeah.
I, I, I literally spiraled into hopelessness.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. The next day I went to work because I wanted to have a conversation with him, and my hand was shaking so much I couldn't even open the door. I
Hmm.
retracted, went back home, climbed in bed, pulled the covers over my head, and
Hmm.
basically was metaphorically sucking my thumb, saying, "Oh my God, have I screwed up? I should have never sold my house. I should have never got a divorce. Should have never came
Hmm.
to California. Should have never started this software company. Shouldn't have brought my son in. I should have done conscious hiring on this guy. I should have done a background check. I should have. I was shooting all over myself."
Hmm.
My son, who worked for the company at that time, walks in my bedroom, comes home for lunch, walks in my bedroom and says, "What on earth are you doing?" He's
You're like,
22 or 23 at the time.
yeah. You're like, I'm
I
hiding.
said,
Leave.
I screwed up and I, by the way, spent my savings over the
Yeah.
last year because I wasn't getting paid.
Right.
I
Right.
spent all the money I had. I gave my intellectual property. I'm screwed.
Right.
He said, "The woman who raised me would
Mm.
never lay down and be a victim. She would stand up and take action." This is my kid
I
calling
know.
me to be, which, by the way, when you're in
Mm.
the state of mind of hopelessness, you can't get yourself out. You need help. So I did
Yes.
what every enlightened individual would do. And I got up and I called Kaiser and made an emergency appointment with a therapist.
There you go.
I thought I needed shock treatment. I thought I needed
Mm.
Prozac. And so I
You just
meet with
could
an
not
emergent.
connect back to yourself, right? You're like, I mean, in that
No,
type of like heightened absolute state of fear, which like some of the common themes that I'm hearing is that like you had this underlying state of fear that lasted for 8 years as you're like putting off this dream. And then so you finally feel like you have the divine easy button. And then next thing you know, it is like your worst nightmare. And trust me, I think that is a common theme through so many aspects of life. So I'm
yeah,
just like
yeah,
nodding along aggressively because we all have a version of this. Okay, so you go for therapy and you're
yes.
like, shock me
So I
back
was
into my
even,
body.
I was even worse than fear at this point. I was
Mm,
hopeless.
mm,
Listen, I grew up in an abusive household, not my mom, but my dad was a drug addict
mm,
and an alcoholic, and he physically abused my mother and he verbally abused my
mhm,
brother and the girls, and
mhm.
I
I'm
broke
so
my sister's
sorry.
arm. Yeah. So, but the point is, I'm resilient and I have never been in the place that I was in
Yeah.
that day. So I meet with the therapist. He's got 1 hour. I think he's going to give me a prescription, maybe
Mm.
shock treatment. He said, "My dear, you do not need therapy. You are one of the most sane people I've ever met. This is
Oh.
Silicon Valley and you need an attorney."
Holy shit.
So
But bless
now I
him for
need,
not taking your money and being like, I'll fix this person who doesn't need fixing. Like, all right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. So
Okay.
next day I met with an intellectual property attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And right after I met with him, I still didn't have the courage. Like I didn't necessarily believe it would all be okay because I had to go get unemployment. Now, this is a girl who
Right.
worked getting people jobs for 20 years. And
Yeah.
I looked down on people that turned down work to
Mm-hmm.
get unemployment. I was
Mm-hmm.
offering people jobs and they're like, I can make more on unemployment. And I
Unemployment.
said,
Yeah,
yeah, but you
sure.
don't understand what it's going to do to your self-esteem to go collect unemployment. You need to be working. I just have a very strong work ethic. Even though
Yes.
my dad was an addict, he was a working addict, and he taught
Yeah.
us all hard work. All of us are entrepreneurs, actually, all of us.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so anyway, um, I'm jogging, and this is when I really think I had my biggest epiphany. I'm jogging just because I knew moving your body will
Mm-hmm.
dissipate this anxiety. So now I'm
Yes.
not hopeless anymore, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid of where I'm going to get my next paycheck.
Yeah.
And my cousin says, you worked all these years, you paid into the system, go collect unemployment. And talk about a humbling experience.
Yes.
Talk about having compassion for all the people I never had compassion for.
Mm.
Boy, was that a wake-up call. But now I'm
Yeah.
jogging, and everyone I'm seeing has like this dark cloud around their head.
Uh-huh.
And
Like
I'm
that
like,
dark
wow,
energy.
what is going on with everybody? Then I go to Starbucks. The Starbucks person has dark energy.
Mm.
Then I meet with my coach. She says, I want you to do this workshop. It was 4 days. It was called Life Spring. And I
Mm.
spent time in there just recalibrating my mind, my body, my soul, the whole 9 yards. I get out of there. It was called Discovery. I go
Mm-hmm.
for a run, same path, same people, because people run the same, we all run the same
Right.
paths. We see the same people. Light energy around their faces.
Huh.
Go to the same Starbucks, get the same person. My drink is perfect. She's happy. And I'm like, holy shit, I am creating what I'm seeing.
Uh-huh. So
And
yours,
that
no,
was the
please
beginning of
continue.
me. That was the beginning of me declaring, I don't need to wait to be in the field that I dreamed of, and I don't need money in the bank to do it. I see firsthand that we create what we see in the world. And that
Mm.
really was the beginning. I started
Gosh.
writing articles. I started writing articles on my 20-year career in recruiting about retention and engagement. And I worked with my coach, Gina Gabellini, and Cookie Boudreau. I had two coaches. Cookie was about who do I be during that intellectual property battle. And I can share that maybe if we have time or not.
Sure. Yeah.
And Gina was about laying the foundation to live in a state of creation, to
Mm.
live in a nonlinear reality that I could create that future. I wrote an article, and I was obviously in a good place when I wrote it. It got published. Somebody picked up that article, walked into the CEO's office and said, we need this. Hire this woman. He sent
Amazing.
me an email, said, I'm doing everything wrong. Everything you talk about in your article, I'm doing. I want to hire you. That client turned into being $1 million client over 3 years. And it
God.
was a mindset shift.
Yes. Oh, the lessons. Why do the lessons have to be so big? But they certainly
Yeah.
are, right? Sometimes we truly
Yeah.
have to be brought to our knees. And another woman I interviewed explained it so well that like your heart literally has to be broken in order for it to be cracked for the light to get
Mm.
in. Maybe that's your mind,
Yeah.
maybe that's your soul, but like sometimes it takes those moments that bring us to our knees. It really is the impetus around write your own story. Like my life I thought I was being the perfect everything and, doing everything as I should. And my life still fell apart. And so I'm like, fuck it. I'm writing my own rules. And this is what I want for my life. And who am I? And what is my authentic self? But if I hadn't been brought to
Yeah.
my knees, I never would have this opportunity to then have a podcast to teach women how to start and run businesses in 20 hours a week or less, because I want to see women do what is on their heart. And here you are putting with your positive mindset, your reset energy out into the world. And I think this is the essence of manifesting, right? I believe that like sort of what you put
I
out, you
believe,
receive.
I believe too.
Okay.
And
So
I would
if what,
say I continually have to be conscious of where I am on those 7 levels of consciousness, because courage is a very fragile state. Something could
interesting.
happen. We could lose an opportunity. We could get one too many pieces of evidence that maybe we're not it. And then we
Yeah.
start to believe those thoughts. And so courage is a fragile state, and it's something we all need to be mindful of for ourselves, is what keeps us in courage, what gets us back into courage, and how do we discipline ourselves to stay in a state of courage. Because I wasn't in courage when I walked by that door. I was in fear, and
Yeah.
I deluded myself into thinking God sent them to me. You know, in hindsight, maybe that was a test of my
Right.
own integrity and my own commitment to this conscious hiring,
Mm.
because I didn't use it.
Yeah, it seems right. But I mean, sometimes you have to fumble to learn. And that is the beauty in failure. Is there anything better than when someone asks you where you got something and you're like, Amazon, can you believe it? It's like when someone says, oh, I love your dress, and you get to be like, it has pockets. I love Amazon because I can experiment with trends and activewear and fashion, beauty, and anything else I really want without having to break the bank. If you're like me and you get a little bit sad, okay, maybe more than a little bit sad, when there's no package at the door, then you are my people. Also, I think we might need help. But until then, visit amazon.com/shop/write your own story co, or click the link in the show notes to shop all my faves in fashion, beauty, home decor, organization, and more. These are treasures you're not going to want to miss. Can I take us on like a total tangent path? Because I'm really loving where this is going. Can you talk about the 7 levels? It's not a pop quiz if you don't know all of them, but I think this is what a cool perspective. And just a quick point on courage that hit me is that I think Brene Brown said once that like we will constantly look for evidence that we don't belong, but that everyone is worthy of belonging. And so that if we have to your point, I just had breakfast with some really amazing women here in Cincinnati, and we were talking about sort of what I've learned in this long-term research story of what it means to write your own story. And it's, so much of it is around these boundaries, but it's boundaries that you have to put with yourself that seem to be the hardest. Yes. So to your point, if you are starting to slip out of that state of courage, that's on you to put the boundaries back on your mindset, to get back in touch with your soul. And to choose again, choose a different thought and get back in there. Okay. So can we dive into this a little bit? I'm very curious.
Yeah. So 7 levels of individual, group, and organizational effectiveness is derived from Dave Hawkins' consciousness mapped. And what Dave studies, he's a neuroscientist, and he studies not only the brain and neuroscience, but he studies the energy of it. So, and there's another author, Bruce Lipton, who I would say, if you're a reader, reading both of their books, very powerful. The lowest level of consciousness or effectiveness is hopelessness. And when we're in hopelessness, we can't see a positive future. We are stuck. And I'm talking about stuck in cement. Like I was stuck that day in that bed. It takes someone to pull you out, a therapist, a friend, a son, a husband, a wife, a dog,
right?
But to
truly.
have you realize you're stuck, because when you're stuck, you've got all the walls around you. And in hopelessness, a person can only hope to be 5% effective, because 95% of the time they can't see a way out. The level above that is fear. And in fear, 10% effectiveness. What happens in fear is you've either got craving, you're wanting something that you can't have, like I want a husband, I want the right job, I want a client. Or you're pushing away what is. I'm running out of money. Oh my God, I don't want to deal with this. Either way, you're not present. You're in this self-protection mode. And the adrenaline, the cortisol, and the norepinephrine are racing through your body, constricting not only your thinking, but your internal organs. So it isn't a great place to be. It's a state of dis-ease.
Oh, yes, sure. And that is
true. This is what causes stress. So one level above that is frustration. And this is where you are fighting against others. You are at battle. You're elbowing people out of the way, trying to change them, arguing your perspective. Now you're more effective when you're there, because you've got this energy moving through you, but it's fight energy, which is destructive. In frustration, you can only be effective up to 25% of the time. So a lot of people, when I'm doing my public speaking talks, they'll be like, Maji, but frustration is the mother of invention. Yes, it is. But if you try to invent in a state of frustration,
Yes.
you have no access to your entire executive brain, because the adrenaline, the cortisol, and the norepinephrine are racing, and it blocks your critical thinker. So you will create things that cause more problems. And everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Oh,
We
yeah.
fix one thing, and then we have a litany of the domino effect of the problems that one fix, because we were not in the right state of mind. So frustration is powerful. It's a powerful catalyst for change.
Yes.
And by the way, you can't jump from hopelessness to frustration, or frustration above the line, which I'll talk about in a minute. It's the only way up is through. And it's like, you'll see it if you stop and you get aware of your own sense of what's happening. You'll see yourself in those different spaces. So the power and freedom line is conscious choice. This is the line of alignment. I choose to not be miserable, to not be angry, to not be afraid. I choose to be empowered. And you might say easier said than done, Brene, but it is a choice. The beauty about being a human being and not an animal is we have the power of volition. We can choose. So when we choose, we step into a state of courage. Now, here's what happens to our hormones and our chemicals in our body and even our neurons. When we are in a state of courage, which is a belief in a positive future, often despite evidence that a positive future is available, we are releasing serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, that love hormone, and endorphins. And we could see bigger. Our perspective shifts from constrained below the line to awake, aware, and alert of all of it above the line. And the further above the line we move, the bigger our perspective gets. So encourage, just in a state of belief. I believe I will start that business. I believe I have what it takes to be a public speaker. I believe the money will come. I believe my right partner will show up. I believe I'll be the kind of daughter that my aging mother needs. I believe. Just by believing, you're operating in a state of possibility, which is effective 65% of the time, which is a hell of a lot better than 25% of the time.
It sure is.
Now, in courage, when you move up, the next level is engagement. This is where I now take action in service of my vision for myself or my life or my fitness or whatever it is that I'm working on. And now I'm all in. I'm engaging. I'm playing. I'm doing the work. I'm writing articles. I'm out there public speaking. I'm spending time with my mom, driving to Illinois for the summer. I'm in the game. And guess what? In engagement, people are effective 79% of the time. This is why every company wants engaged employees, but they don't understand the human condition. And the human condition is to give us evidence that we belong below the line. Because when we're in fear, we'll buy things. We'll take pills. We'll do drugs. We'll drink alcohol. We'll overeat. We'll self-indulge because we want to make ourselves feel better, because our ego is designed to keep us trapped, to keep us in the protection zone. Anyway, that's probably a tangent. So
I loved it,
in
though.
engagement, in engagement, I'm all in. The next level above engagement is innovation. And in a state of innovation, 89% of the time, whether you're trying and failing or trying and winning, you experience yourself as being effective, and so do others. You're setting aside your ego. You're setting aside your agenda. You're setting aside your protection, and you're just sharing and trying and failing and experimenting and collaborating with others. Could you imagine a whole organization operating in engagement without fear of somebody stealing their ideas, but trusting that we all had each other's back, or a group of girlfriends or a family operating in that state? So 89% effective. Here's what happens to your brain in a state of innovation. It is expanding to the point where you're now tapping into your genius. Your right and left hemispheres are on full cylinder, full speed ahead. and they're integrating. So you not only see what needs to get done, you see your cause in the matter of getting it done. You see the whole picture, whether that whole picture is your job, your family, your community, or the world. The highest level of effectiveness is synchronicity. In the state of synchronicity, you experience everything. Everything is happening for you, including choosing the wrong partner, losing $1 million, finding out that you, after, shaming people internally, not externally, for collecting unemployment, that now you are collecting it. And that's God or the universe saying, hey, lady, wake up. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get by. Or looking down on people that have had affairs. And now I'm having one and I didn't even know I was. By the way, I stopped it immediately when his daughter walked in and said, Mom wants to know what time you're coming home for dinner.
Oh my God.
There's so much more to this story. This is a book that has yet to be written, but it'll be probably when I'm not working anymore.
It will be a bestseller.
So synchronicity, in synchronicity, everything that happens, we interpret as happening for us. And we live in the realm of magical coincidence. Now, you might say, well, everybody wants to be in synchronicity, but the truth is, you see bands like the Grateful Dead, they got into synchronicity. The show Hamilton, certainly synchronicity. A good basketball team like the Bulls or the Warriors are, consistently operating in synchronicity. It takes something. It takes discipline and rigor and commitment. It doesn't happen by accident. By the way, nothing above the line happens and lasts by accident. It takes the human being saying, I am willing to put in the work. I am willing to do what I need to do to live in this state of creation. And by the way, I go up and down that ladder all day, all week long. Most of the time, I think 65% of my time I spend in courage. Yesterday, I was in Scottsdale filming my keynotes, and I've never filmed full keynotes, and I've never filmed it with an organization that specializes in keynotes. So they work with people who get $50,000 for a talk, and they work with people who get $5,000 for a talk. So I'm in there filming, and all of a sudden I got that, oh my God, I'm a very small fish in a very big pond of a lot of people way better than me. And I spiraled into not good enough, can't do it, oh shit. So we spent the entire afternoon that we were supposed to be recording where the video guy is coaching me on changing my whole business. Like, don't do culture, do personal development and all this stuff. And I went home Wednesday night and I just I'm like, I really want to drink, but I don't want to numb out. I really just want to eat, but I don't want to numb out. So what I did is order a really healthy meal from True Foods and I went to sleep. And I woke up at 5:00 in the morning and I wrote what I was going to talk about and I regained my power. And I had a call with a coach and she said, do not give away your power. You know who you are. You have built an entire career and you can do this. And I was already in the place, so it was very receptive. I went there and I nailed it. And whether I get 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 or no thousand, I gave it my best shot. And what I was thinking about on my way home on the plane is I went down to hopelessness and I climbed my way back out and I didn't give up. And that's the win.
That's the win. Hell yeah, that's the win. Because we are all human and we are all susceptible to all the things that move us down the ladder. And man, those travel at the speed of light, don't they? The fear, the doubt, the past stories, anything. It's amazing. Do they have like a super portal into the brain? Like, I don't know. I would love to slow those thoughts down.
It's our subconscious programming, actually, what Bruce Lipton talks about and Dave Hawkins. From your third trimester till the point that you are through your 7th year, your theta brain waves are picking up like a sponge everything around you. So like I had an addict father who was violent when he was on his drugs and a mother who placated it all, pretended none of it was happening. She'd hide him up in the bedroom. And if something happened, she would say, that didn't really happen. So my little girl got some programming that don't trust yourself.
Yes.
You think you heard him hitting her, but she's saying it didn't happen. I mean, I
Yeah.
love my mom. I love her.
She
But
was
she
doing
gave
what
us
she
some
needed to
advice
survive.
that's right. And she gave us some advice that didn't help with the subconscious programming. You don't have to
Mhm.
be raised in an abusive family. You could have been raised in a completely placated family where everything was perfect, like Pollyanna, and everybody was enabled. You're going to pick up that you're not capable. You're going to pick
Yeah.
up that people need to do things for you. You're going to pick up that you're weak or
Mm.
small. So
Mm.
we don't realize the programming we're giving to our kids. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
grateful that I raised my kids in the Oprah era because I
Mhm.
used to whisper into their head while they were sleeping, "You're good enough. You can do
Oh.
anything you want." Now they'll probably tell you, "Yeah, she did a lot of stuff wrong," but I know that I consciously put messages in their head when they were sleeping because I trusted Oprah and Oprah said to do that.
Right. You're like, honestly, whatever Oprah says I'm doing, I still feel that way. I'm like, if I need to
Because it could
reset my
change
mind,
the
yes.
subconscious programming. But here, the thing is, the ego was designed. I mean, I don't know how we got designed, but our amygdala was it is part of our anatomy and was there to protect us and to wake up our ego to we needed to be protected. So anytime something happens and
Yeah.
we feel like it could be a threat, the cortex, those behaviors, those reactionary behaviors, comes out to say, "Don't fuck with me.
Right.
I'm going to protect my girl or
Yep.
my
I'm going to
guy or
survive.
my kid." And
Mm-hmm.
we just go into animal mode. That's
Yeah.
why, my calling is to liberate the human spirit, that
Mm.
people are liberated. And it's really that choice point and that alignment of who do I say I am? What do
Mm-hmm.
I say my values are? And am I living in alignment? And when we're below the line, we're not. I'll tell you what,
Right.
when I found out that guy was married, as I mentioned, I stopped it immediately. He
Yeah.
retaliated. This is such a good story for women. I'm actually thinking about redoing one of my keynotes because I'm going to be in Santa Cruz for the women's leadership event. And this whole story is a great, what I'm sharing with you. I think this is going to be my keynote because
Cool.
as soon as I took my power back and stopped seeing that man on a personal level, he
Mm-hmm.
changed my job description. He said I was accountable for 50,000 subscribers within 2 months. He started building a case to have me be fired. And then he fired my protege. Like all of it was so he could control. And then this is the
Yep.
last thing I'll say about this story. When I was going to see the intellectual property attorney, a man that I put on the board called me and said, "Maji, do you realize that what you're doing is similar to aborting a baby in the ninth month?"
Oh God.
And I stopped and I thought, you are a freaking creep.
Yeah. Right.
You
You
would never
asshole.
say that to a man. You would never say that to a man. But
Right.
you're
And do
going to
you,
use my,
yeah,
and by the way, he never had kids.
right.
How
You don't even,
dare him?
uh-huh.
How dare him? So, by the way, that company folded. I did get my intellectual property back. Thank you, Cookie, for coaching me through that deposition. And and we pulled the software back from them. They couldn't use it. They
Good.
started a new thing, and they fired the CEO because they realized he was a crook, a
Mm.
criminal, a cheater, a liar, and a social maniacal.
Right. He's
Anyway,
ick. He was ick. Well, okay. So you have cleared your energy from that and all these opportunities are finally opening up based on this one article. So when we think about the 7 levels and we're working our way past that like middle fold line and we're getting into courage, I feel like courage is something that a lot of us can tangibly be like, okay, I can think of the prompts that I would say to myself to get me into that courageous state. But to get farther and farther up for what feels almost like that flow state where you're creating out of just like soul energy and everything feels like it is just vibrating through you. Life is happening with you. Like, how do you coach people to get into those higher areas when the ego is constantly like, girl, let's go back down? What are the, like, do you
yeah.
have
So it
prompts or?
Yes. Yeah. Well, first of all, courage. Typically, you have to move your body. So there's these things called fear
Mm,
melters that are from the body and the body of work of body intelligence. And you can melt your fear, or you can wiggle your fear, or you can aggressively meet anger to have the fear go away or root, or you can do some love scoops and love yourself to have that fear go away. But typically it's moving into something. So buying a ticket to go somewhere, signing up for something that scares you, having a conversation that scares you. But before you do that, you've got to connect to your highest aim, your intent. What is my calling?
Yeah.
And then you've got to say, what do I need to do to stay here? And that is taking action. You must take, hope I don't get out of the camera, but you must move forward and take action in order to take that courage and make something happen. So when we're coaching people, we teach them the fear melters. We work with them on identifying their calling or aim or dharma or intention for life and for their whole life. And then we look at what are the values, and then what are the disciplines? What's the architecture that you need to put in place? And then a lot of breathing exercises. I mean, I remember when my coach just taught me to do 6-point breaths just to recalibrate. And I've had a lot of different coaches. I've studied a lot of different domains. Another one would say, actually, Dr. Margaret Paul, famous for inner bonding. She'll say, close your eyes, put yourself into a beautiful setting and connect to your highest spiritual guide. That could be yourself. That could be Jesus. That could be Moses. That could be Allah. It could be a butterfly, but connect to your highest spiritual guide. And ask your guide what it needs to tell you. And then you listen, and then she says, now go in to where the fear resides. Where does the fear reside? And I'll say, well, I feel like I'm anxious in my stomach. And she'll say, so touch base with the little girl that's anxious, because it really is about inner self. It's the child, the child we left behind that is experiencing fear. And then she'll have you connect with the highest level of spirituality to the child and bypass the thinking. What does the child need? The child needs love. The child needs to know it's all going to be okay. The child needs to trust. And then there's this other piece, the wounded self. And it's the wounded self, typically that adolescent in a dating world that I was part of, they call it the madolescent, but it's that rebel teenager that actually beats us up. That's the voice of, I can't, you don't fit in, you suck. It's not the little kid. The little kid is more afraid. It's the teenager that's the bully. And so I know this sounds like very shrinkish, but
I'm tracking.
Works. And it's about surrendering to something bigger than how I feel in the moment.
So how do you calm down?
When I coach people.
How do you calm down the angry adolescent? Yeah, as you connect to your higher self, and I very much so understand how to soothe the child who needs something. But what about the pissed off adolescent? What are we doing with all that anger?
So it's what's she pissed off about? What does she need? What does she need to show it? So I'll give you an example. I was in a leadership training with Coactive Training Institute, and we had a woman who was in our cohort who was super sweet and nice. Everything was sweet. Everything was syrupy. Everything was so nice. Everything is great. And he said, Henry Kimsey House said, get pissed. So she tried to get pissed, but she couldn't. And he goes, and he got in her face and he was provoking her and provoking her. She went berserk and she broke through her suppression of anger. So for me, what I do, I'll go running. I'll go to Orange Theory and I'll get it out inside of my exercise. I'll go for a long, rigorous walk. But I meet energy with energy now. As a younger woman, back before I've done all this work, I would go to anger. But here's the deal. Anger is a cover for fear. And when we think we're just angry because we're angry, there's something under that. And what it really is a fear of not being enough, a fear of being taken advantage of, a fear of, a fear of, a fear of. So you want to process that anger. You want to get it out. My mom bought my brother a punching bag when he was young. And she was very, very smart for doing that because he would hold everything in. And so what Kay and Gay Hendricks teach in the body intelligence coaching is to, like, most people won't do this. And when I have clients or I'm running a retreat and it's remote, I'll have them turn off their camera, but like, get angry and let it out. And when you meet anger with anger, it goes away. The other thing you can do when you're angry is root. And again, I don't know how this camera is, so I'm going to be really short, but like get into a squat and root into the ground and know that I will be okay. I can handle this. And you know what I'm angry about? I'm angry that I'm not being heard. You know what I'm angry about? I'm angry that people aren't keeping their word with me. You know what I'm angry about? I'm angry at myself because I don't have any boundaries.
Damn. This is amazing. Okay. So we're pissed off teenager. And then as we are like climbing up the ladder of consciousness, how do we, and then again, I guess it's connecting back. It's sort of the formula. I hate to say formula because this is such an intuitive conversation, but the methodology is really like connect to that higher, tell me what I need, listen to yourself, bring that back to wherever level you are and move through it. Kind of, and just continue to, and give yourself grace and know that you're going to go up and down, but like meet you where you are kind of thing. Am I getting this right?
Yeah. And yes, of course, meet yourself where you are and accept yourself where you are. And the other thing about those lower levels are, what are they trying to teach you?
Yeah.
What are they trying to show you? And what I've learned from Margaret and many others is if you set up a ritual, like if I practice inner bonding every day on a walk, if I do something every day, when I need it, I'll have that arrow in my quiver to pull out. But if I only do it when I'm having a breakdown, I might forget. And so it's about building the muscle. We all know this through exercise. As soon as you stop going to the gym, game over. As soon as you say, God, I look really great, I'm going to have a cherry pie. Then I'm going to have another one. I'm going to have a malt. I'm going to have a chocolate bar. Pretty soon you don't look so great in those clothes anymore. So it's ongoing discipline. And this is why meditation during COVID, I really doubled down on my meditation every day for 20 minutes with Bob Roth of tm.org. He was meditating with 6,000 people a day from all over the world. I not only thought about meditating, I actually meditated and did it ritualistically every day for a year. And now it's part of my fiber. It's helped me really calm down and have more patience. And nobody's perfect, but being overly patient and overly tolerant means no boundaries. And for women, we really do have to cultivate that. But it's practicing the ritual of caring for ourselves first, knowing where we are at in those levels, starting to identify what are our triggers. I have this culture catalyst program where I teach HR people inside companies to do what I do as a consultant. And I had a group of them on a call the other day, and there was a whole bunch of frustration and anger because people were not adopting their healthy, intentional, high performance culture philosophies. And it was actually kind of funny because here you're teaching health and you're pissed off at everybody.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You're teaching emotional intelligence. And they all got to see that they allow themselves to spin out of control. One woman shared that she was pissed off for 2 days. She told everyone that she talked to, boyfriend, mom, all the people that she works with, how angry she was. And so she was propagating her own frustration and feeding off of it. It's very dangerous to not be aware of when you're doing it. So catching that reaction as it's coming out of your mouth is power. Between stimuli and response, if you could spread the time, even by seconds, it takes 90 seconds to change your thought. If you could just breathe for 90 seconds, 90 seconds, it's all it takes to change a thought.
As you may know, Cincinnati Children's Hospital is near and dear to my heart. If you don't, check out the episode, A Story of Miracles, to be inspired. Not only did they save my daughter's life, but they've saved countless lives each and every day through their exceptional care, tireless research, and so much more. I wanted to find a creative way to not only support women, but to give back to the hospital I hold so dear. And I think I've come up with something really fun and exciting. Okay, I'm just going to shoot you straight here. One of the ways for a podcast to make money is for people to subscribe, aka contribute money to support the show. As exciting as a new way to make money is for me, I wanted to turn this into an opportunity for others. So if you choose to subscribe for as little as $3 a month, where you can can cancel at any time. You can submit a friend or a women-owned business to get a special shout out on the podcast, and half of your subscription money will go directly to Cincinnati Children's, supporting their needs in life-saving research and care. This feels amazing to me because everybody wins. Your bestie, your business, the hospital, and the show are all being supported through this effort. Click the support our show link in the show notes today to not only get a shout out, but to support the #1 pediatric hospital in the world. Everyone has 90 seconds. And to your point of like knowing what your triggers are, or even if you haven't been able to identify that yet, somatically, what does it feel like in your body when you feel yourself start to boil? To be like, what, like if you're to your point, like, am I feeling anxious in my stomach or whatever? Those like, where are your cues that you can be so attached to yourself that you can fix it? So when we think about this conscious scale and we think about your mission around connecting with these CEOs, the leaders of these companies, is it really to inspire them to live their best life? So then that, back to your point of like, I'm on my run and everyone is a dark cloud and now everyone is a bright light. Is it sort of like spreading, getting them in their best life and centered in their highest state of flow and their highest level of consciousness, or at least the ability to return so that then spreads throughout the company?
Yes.
Amazing.
It's around, I named my company Keen Alignment because when this company was created, I had keen hire and I was out of alignment. And I said, it's all about alignment. If you honor your values as they're the gospel for life, you will be above the line more often than not. So it's bringing people into alignment with their highest and best self, so that they can operate from human spirit and not human animal. Because human animal is defense, aggressive, passive, hiding out. We're operating at our lowest level of consciousness. And, somebody said to me once, Maji, people are always doing the best they can with the level of consciousness they currently have available to them. And we have to have compassion for where they're at, because they don't have the level of consciousness, and just because you have doesn't mean everybody does. And I took that to heart. And so I think my job is to help people turn on the light of their own innate intelligence.
This is amazing. So what does a conversation with a CEO look like when you're like, okay, because when I think, coming from an empathetic point of view, they have had to, as an animal would, fight, claw, prove, defend, survive all their way up to their position. And now it's like, okay, you've made it, but it's time to switch everything you've been bred and taught in this environment of work. And we're going to literally flip it. We're going to just kick it to the curb, and you're going to be a whole new conscious state of being. Like, I'm being a bit facetious, but essentially, yes. So what does a conversation like that look like? I'm picturing like
it doesn't look like what you just said, because they would freak out. It looks like, how do we create an environment where the environment is fertile ground for cooperation, collaboration, and innovation? We begin with what they need, and they need performance. They need profitability. Then we take it away from that and say, okay, that's the end game. So what we need to do is cultivate an environment where people can thrive and where you can thrive. And then I do different exercises with them. One of them is they make a list of their 100 successes in their life, so they could tune into what has them be successful in every area of life. What are the common threads? What are the parallel lines?
Ooh, I'm going to go do that.
What are the 100 things? Pardon me?
I said, I'm going to go do that.
Yeah. And then the 100 things you want to do before you leave Earth in every area, or the 100 things you want to accomplish. What the 100 things do, and the smart ones will do this before I ask them. They're all smart, but the ones that have a real keen intuition, they'll categorize. And then when they categorize those 100 things, we start to look at what life has been to them and what they want life to be. And I am always coaching them through that lens, not through the lens of having people perform better, not through the lens of getting them above the line. It's, what is your aim? Then the very first real work we do with them is create their aim. Why are you this CEO? Put the money aside. Put the fame aside. You already got that. Why do you do what you do? What does it inspire you? And there are people who will not hire me because they think this is pop psychology, and that's good for
Yeah.
them. They shouldn't hire me because they'll
Right.
wind up firing me because they're not going to want to change. And in my
Yeah.
book, Ignite Culture, the whole first third of that book deals with if you want change in your company, it begins with you. And as many people
Yeah.
that love that book are as many people that don't love that book because they want to have some magic pill or red pill, blue pill. And I just want to take the red pill and have my company work. And it doesn't work that way. Not with small to
No.
mid-sized businesses. The leader emanates the energy and either tolerates mediocrity or forces aggressiveness. But if we can get in the
Mm-hmm.
middle, in the Goldilocks, we're good.
Yeah.
So once they do their aim, then we look at what are the values that you want to hold true. So I'm working with a CEO that I call Hal because I can't use his real name. And Hal
Sure.
spent his whole life succeeding in sales by being likable by everybody.
Mm.
Hal has a winning formula of needing approval. His saboteur is needing approval. His winning formula is being likable. He gets to the CEO job in his 30s, and everything
Wow.
that worked for him in sales is no longer working because people are making their own rules. There's infighting. There's disrespect for each other. I work with Hal more times than not on his grounding. Let's tune
Mm.
in to who you are as a highest level of consciousness. And he chooses to be a man that makes a positive impact in the lives of thousands. What
Mm.
are his values? Integrity,
Mm-hmm.
clarity, and direction. So then we embody those. And just like you were saying, embody with the lower self. And how do you
Mm-hmm.
feel in your stomach? Well, there's the same embodiment for above the line. Where do you feel
Okay.
courage? Where do you feel synchronicity? And then they give it a color and a shape, and they tune into that. And then what are the actions you need to take now inside of that state of mind to do the right thing for your future, for thousands of people's future, and overcome this need for approval? Because, as a
Oof.
CEO, sometimes you have to make some tough calls. Sometimes you're
Yes.
not going to be popular. Sometimes you have to tell people, if you don't get with the program, I'm going to have to let you go, even if that's
Yeah.
an unpopular thing to say. And we think it's just women, but I'm telling you, I coach a lot of men, and men
Yeah.
deal with the same things as women. It's just
Yeah.
there's so many more women who are
Mm.
willing to say that they deal with those things, and the
Yeah.
men are not trained to be vulnerable and say, yeah, I have insecurities, I don't have good boundaries. But trust me, there's just as many men that deal with the exact same things. It's just not popular to talk about it.
Yeah. Oh, well, I love that you're being able to bring that to them, and because what a missed opportunity to not be able to be vulnerable and to really tap into your highest self. Wow, this is
Right.
absolutely fascinating. Okay, so we've got the CEO feeling bright, shiny, aligned, in value, in flow. How does that transcend then into what we
Really
were
good.
talking about before of, performance, cultural engagement, et
Well,
cetera, et cetera?
well, so the CEO being in alignment isn't always shiny, by the way.
Okay.
Sometimes it's putting the hammer down and saying, we're not
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah.
Like the CEO of Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, when he
Mm-hmm.
found out that the cotton being used to make those jackets was being done by slave labor and abusive practices, he put the gauntlet down and fired that vendor. And
Yeah.
everyone in that company needed to assemble to get a new provider of cotton immediately.
Yeah.
You didn't have a sense of urgency. You were not part of that team. It needed to be done now. So
Yeah.
it's not always shiny, but now the next layer is the executive team, because the
Okay.
health and the fitness, the psychological health and fitness of the executive team, being able to work in synergy together, being able to disagree constructively, being able to tell the truth about what's not working, that's the next level. So we haven't even gotten to performance yet. It's
Sure.
this group, because this group touches the most of the people in the organization. So this
Yes.
first circle is the CEO, the next circle is the executive team, and you probably wouldn't be surprised at how much dysfunction is in this first layer family,
I've seen
because
it
there's
firsthand.
yeah, yeah, there's relationships, there's cordial hypocrisy, there's
Mm-hmm.
saying yes in a meeting and afterward pretending you didn't hear what you said yes to.
Mm-hmm.
There's picking sides, like marketing hates sales. So everyone that works in marketing hates everyone that works in sales, and the two shall never cross. There's so much dysfunction, which is why we lead this retreat where we level set with people. And it doesn't mean we punch them out. It means they get deeply aligned and they all get on the same page. They level set and they tell the truth about the
Yeah.
dysfunction that is the elephant in the middle of that executive room. And they
Yeah.
come clean with the impact they've had on making that dysfunction. And they make promises, and they develop architecture and framework to keep themselves honest. And then the best
Mm-hmm.
companies will get all of those people on the executive team a coach, so that they have partnership in working through how to be a functional human system. When
Yeah.
they're functional, when they stop stepping over the dysfunction of aggressive defensive behavior and passive defensive behavior, when they walk their own talk, now you start to see critical mass in the organization. And my book is set up this exact way. Second
Mm-hmm.
whole third of the book is about the health of the human system on the executive team. And so getting these people at an offsite, not to drink beer, not to go wine tasting, not to drive race cars, but let's tell the truth, guys and gals, about
Yeah.
what's not working. Let's get real. This is the power of getting real, and then making commitments so that the future can be an invented future and not a future where we're whacking moles and fixing all these problems that all the friction caused. And so
Yes.
the third step beyond the deep alignment is that the executive team plus who
Mm-hmm.
reports to them, their number one report, comes together and creates collectively a compelling future. This isn't your typical mission, vision,
Right.
values
Right.
workshop. This
Right.
is, what is our cause? Why are we on this planet? And how do
Mm-hmm.
we want people that we serve and people who serve as part of our contribution to that cause? How do we want them to experience working here? Now,
Yeah.
Patagonia did that beautifully. Even Satya Nadella, when he took over Microsoft, the first thing that man did is he brought in nonviolent communication and told
Wow.
everybody on the executive team, we no longer yell at each other. And if you
Yeah.
don't want to do that, you're going to have to leave here. Now, here's a man with Eastern philosophies and principles. He brings in nonviolent communication for his first executive duty. And then he puts the gauntlet down and says, and if you don't want to participate in an organization that operates with integrity, accountability, and respect, you don't have to be here.
Right. That's the
Really
not
powerful.
shiny part, right? Yep.
That's right. That's
Absolutely.
right. That's right.
Okay.
And
I had,
now
oh, please keep
each of these leaders are working with the people that they're five, the
Yep.
five in their Fab Five, and they're
Yep.
training them and they're coaching them. And if they don't have time to train and coach, they're getting them either group coaching or leadership development, so they can learn not how to hold people accountable, although that's part of it, not how
Yeah.
to have better conversations for action and inspiration, although that's part of it, but how to connect human to human, first with yourself, then
Mm.
with another, then with a team. That's the name of the game. You can give
Yeah.
people a laundry list. Do this, say this, say that, blah, 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 blah. But until you cultivate the human in the human system and you have people get aware and awake to their impact and take responsibility for it, and then choose something better, like let's just all be encouraged most of the time. Let's try to be encouraged. Let's set the stage where we can continually cultivate a reason for people to have hope, courage, faith, belief in what we're doing here. If everyone just did that, engagement and performance would skyrocket. Last
Yes.
thing I want to say is,
Please.
a company, is it okay if I tell a brief story?
Yes, absolutely. I'm here to help you
I
tell
know
your
we might be
story. I want
running
to
out
hear
of time,
no way.
but
I'm here
it's
for
just,
your story.
okay. So I was working with this company in Oakland, California, and the leader was referred to me. The CEO was referred to me because I worked with one of their sister companies. He says, Maji, we're weeks away from a union walkout. I need to talk to you. I'd like to interview you to see if we're going to hire you. I go there. He tells me how great the company used to be when the first owners owned it. Then they sold it to the empire, and the empire came in and wanted to force the empire's rules on everybody and force the empire's values. You will value this. You will value that. Way too many values, way too many rules. And the company became soulless. So then the original founder, because the company was losing money, the original founder, who was still getting payouts, called Michael, who was the VP of sales, and said, we want you to come back and we want you to be the president of this organization. And Michael was at the top of his game in sales, but again, didn't know how to be a CEO, but he knew something was wrong, and he had a hunch it was wrong with the culture. Well, we did an organizational culture survey, an ideal versus actual. And what they said, what 385 people said, is that they felt that they were being used by the company, that they were cogs in the wheel, that they didn't care about them as human beings, that they were just there to make the owners rich, and that it was an us versus them environment. And so I brought the executive team. Each member of the executive team got an executive assessment, deep dive. This is a 79-point executive. We met with each one of the executive team, gave them their debrief. Here's your strengths. Here's your weaknesses. This is probably some things you're doing at work that's not causing some great results. They're like, oh yeah, you're right. How do you know that? We get them into a room. We do a deep alignment. They have breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough in truth telling about what they're doing and not doing that has eroded the culture. Because even though the empire owned them, the empire wasn't there every day. They were there every day. And every one of them was resisting that the company was sold. And every one of them was dealing in their own misery and spewing that misery out to everybody else.
Yes.
So they had breakthroughs in that level set. So many breakthroughs. There were tears and hugs and commitments. We got out of there. Michael called me 3 days later and said, I want you to do this for every member of our company. And week after week, 25 people went through this deep alignment process. That year, the company had the best year they had in 100 years of financial performance. That lasted 8 years through Michael's tenure. Now Michael, retired and is now an artist and doing a whole new career. But
very cool.
I worked with him for 5 years out of his 8 years in that role, and they had 8 years of their best performance in 100 years because they cultivated and developed people and gave people a belief that life could be better at work. And by the way, part of what we teach is personal responsibility. For if you're not happy, what are you going to do to change it? If you're not happy, what are you doing that caused the unhappiness? Like we're always having an impact. So it really does work, but it's not shiny and it's not easy. It's grit, determination, and it winds up being a whole lot of love and compassion. But you got to go through the eye of the needle. First.
Yeah, you got to go through it. Okay. So this is actually, I'm so glad you told that story because I had a question that was brewing in the back of my head. So we've got the CEO, this high performance lasts for 8 years, but he's still owned by the empire. And I can imagine the empire still calling and being like, hey, really appreciate your revenue numbers, but I'm going to need you to 1.5 that in the next quarter. When it's like, are you kidding me? I just literally squeezed all the most amazing juice and like, now we're going to up it.
He never bought in. He never bought into that. He never bought into that. And actually,
So what would he say?
I don't actually know what he would say, but Michael is the kind of guy who practices mindfulness and centered. And they were the owners of the company. If they were all about money, they were all about money. He wasn't. And money happened under his watch. But, he eventually retired. I can't tell you why he retired, but he retired and now he's an artist. So here's what happens to people when the bag is pulled off their head and they see themselves for who they are and they see reality for what reality is. Sometimes after several years, they'll choose to move on.
Sure.
And they'll choose to create a whole new future for themselves with this whole new level of consciousness. Now, I'm not saying that's what he did because it was 8 years, but you do get in touch with your parts of yourself that have been dormant. The more alive you become, the more free you get in touch with, like when I was in recruiting, this part of myself that wanted to heal humanity, that was dormant. I
Yeah,
thought getting
totally.
people jobs was it. And
Yeah.
suddenly there's something else that came to me. Well, it's about a lot more than getting people jobs. It's about giving people access to liberation while they're working.
Yeah.
Holy crap, that's
Holy
big.
crap. It's
70%
huge.
of their life is work. What if they could have more access to joy, more access to happiness, which leads to productivity? I didn't tell you this earlier, but Dave Hawkins marks the 550 on the vibrational scale of 0 to 100.
Okay.
550 is when you're in a state of joy. That's between engagement and innovation.
Mm.
So you can be there, you will be highly productive. You're in a
Yeah.
flow state. That is what the flow state is. And
Amazing.
there's lots of things you can do to cultivate a flow state.
And I think about, to your point of he didn't buy into it. These are still the messages that he's getting from corporate, from the empire, whatever we want to call it. But he is the protector of his organization and he leads from his sense of purpose. And so, yes, he knows that he needs to hit those revenue goals, but that's not his messaging to the rest of the people. He still
No,
continues.
no, 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 no. That's
Exactly.
right.
So that's where, like, when you say what are you responsible for, he is the filter, to be like, okay, I hear you and that's part of the game, but what is an alignment for how this company operates, and that is how we will get there. It is not the scare
Yeah, and a
tactic bringing
lot of
people
time.
down to fear.
Yeah, and a lot of times when a company is sold, or what made it so great evaporates when someone new comes in. And a lot of times what happens is the old CEO buys that company back because
Cool.
the company stops making money. I mean, we see this happen all the time, that
Mm-hmm.
there's a buyback. And we're at the beginning. We're at the beginning of an evolution of consciousness in society. And
Yes.
I think you said at the beginning of this, like, what's the future? I think our Gen Zs and our Gen whatever's after that, but these young people, starting with the millennials who are now, many of them in leadership roles, they're seeing that there's a better way than command and control and force and give our life away for money. Because you know
Mm-hmm.
what? You die and your pockets don't come with you.
Nope.
And life is short. And I think there is an awakening that really began with the millennials, some of the boomers, of course, because they started the human potential movement.
Hmm.
But there's so many millennials now that, like, having a coach. Of course, I have a coach.
Hmm.
Everyone has a coach, don't they? And I'm like, actually, we
No.
never had coaches, and no
Yeah.
company ever paid for coaches. Came out of my own pocket. Now coaching is like a whole industry. And I think even I'm interviewing a gentleman tonight who's a Gen Z. He's like 29 years old. And he worked at corporate. And he said, I couldn't stomach it. I couldn't stomach feeling like I was selling my soul to the
Mm-hmm.
devil. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
I became a coach and I came out of the closet and I cultivated myself. And he's got these big vision of bringing love to enterprise. And I love that. Of
Me
course, I
too.
want to interview him and see if we can partner together. Why would you want to
Yeah.
work alone when you can work with a community?
Truly, community is such a gift. And I feel like so often, especially in the age of internet, we can be so isolated. And I think what an amazing opportunity to explore. Okay, I feel like I have so many things that I want to think about, but I really do feel like I understand your holistic approach and I understand absolutely how it applies to the workplace culture. But I feel like there are just so many messages that apply to how you want to show up in your own life. This isn't about dollars
Yeah.
and cents in the job and the seat that you sit in. This is truly about, tapping into your highest self, building your own resilience, showing up for the life, picking your aim and going for it, which I like. This is what I preach for sure. So I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation. I like to end every show asking people, what are your wishes for women and what do you wish women talked more openly about?
My wish for women is liberation, and
Mm,
especially liberation at work. And what that means to me is have a big dream and go for it. And
yeah.
if it means you can't fulfill that with your current employer, find an employer that you can fulfill that. Be true to yourself. your vision, your values, and
Mm-hmm.
don't compromise. Proactively be clear about what your boundaries are, what you'll give, what you won't give, what you'll say yes to, what you'll say no to. And then have a coach or a mentor, but
Mm-hmm.
don't do it alone. I can be a poster child for coaches. I have had one in every realm of life: finance, physical, emotional, spiritual, business. And when I am up against it, when I am doing something I've never done before, I hire a coach. Absolutely,
Wow.
for sure. Because as women, we do appreciate that connection and
Mm-hmm.
that support. And we're more
Yes.
likely to ask for it. So we need to ask for it.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I do feel like there is a silent, lonely epidemic amongst women, and not that they are isolated, but they feel isolated because they feel like they have to figure everything out on their own, or what they're dealing with, it's only them. And so, having a mentor, having a coach, having a support system will break down those feelings of loneliness, which I can't imagine where loneliness falls, but I'm assuming at the bottom of that conscious scale. So I think
Yeah,
that is
hopelessness.
fantastic. Yeah, truly. Okay, so that is your wish for women. What do you wish, and what do you wish women talked more openly about?
I actually think they are talking about this, but maybe that's
Yeah.
just my circles, but how they self-sabotage, their
Mm,
self-doubt. I
yeah.
wish they shared more. We started this podcast with me sharing about me being below the line. And
Hmm.
then I shared about the video experience where I was like, oh my God, I'm an imposter. I
Hmm.
wish women shared more with other women actual examples of where they were below the line, where they were self-deprecating, where their limiting beliefs held them back and they broke through. I want them to share how they break through, because when we talk about being below the line and we leave people there, it kind of leaves this residual of, yeah, misery loves company. But
Yeah.
no, I pulled myself out and here's how I did it. Because then we give hope. Then we're
Yeah. Ugh.
sharing courage. And I think we need to share courage. Whether you like Kamala or not, she is gaining momentum because she's a woman,
Hmm.
because she's
Yeah.
a Black woman, and because she is spreading the news about freedom and liberation. And we can be one, and we need to share the good news with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope is, the cornerstone to the notion of keeping going and to get out of hopelessness, like you said. Oh, that is amazing. Well, honestly, I cannot thank you enough for your perspective. This has been absolutely eye-opening, and I have really, really enjoyed this conversation. If people want to read your book, if people want to work with you, how do we find you? How do we get involved?
So Ignite Culture, it's on Amazon and it's
Hmm.
Margaret Graziano. And my website is margaretgraziano.com. If you're in the business world and you're interested in cultural evolution or breaking through barriers in your organization, it's keenalignment.com. And it's just not me at Keen Alignment. We have a community and a cohort of coaches who are the best in the business. And so everyone is available to be at your service.
I love it. Oh, thank you so much for today. I have really I think that these kinds of conversations, I know that this will bring some serious chatter. So to all of those listening, please share. This is such an important thing for all of us to reflect on. We all have these moments in our lives. We all think about how we show up either in business or sort of in our construct of a job, of whatever that may be in life, of the membership of you are in a team or in a family or whatever it may be. So this has been such beautiful things to reflect on. So thank you so much for your time. Everyone, definitely go out. I cannot wait to rip through this book. I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating as I build this business, and am collecting these beautiful people to help build it with me. So thank you so much for your perspective. I am so grateful for your time.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. And make sure to leave a review on that book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's go out and review that book. Let's keep bumping it up. I looked at it on Amazon. The reviews are already amazing, and you've got a ton of them, and we're going to add to them. Don't you worry, girl. We got you.
Awesome.
Oh,
Thank you.
yes, absolutely. All right, you guys, head on out, grab that book, check out the website, and have a reflection on this conversation, because truly this one hit me right in the soul. So thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Well, that's the end of this episode, but promise me you won't stop here with whatever it is you're feeling or dreaming about. I hope you leave today feeling empowered to live life just as you see fit. If this podcast was helpful to you, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. I genuinely just want to help women live the life they dream about. So if this type of content tracks with you, subscribe to this podcast or visit our website, writeyourownsstory.co, to download digital courses or to grab a journal and a mug to just dream in and dream with. It's your life, lady. Do you. And just remember, I'm rooting for you and you've totally got this.